So a lot of people are wondering which hero equipments are the best, which one should we prioritize with our upgrades, because ores are hard to get right now in Clash of Clans. So I've put together a tier list based on my experiences, based on what we've been seeing in the 5v5 scene with the pro players, and based on what the pro players and other content creators are saying. So with that, let's get into this tier list. So starting off this tier list, we've got the F tier here at the very bottom, and the only thing that's going to be in the F tier is the giant arrow with the queen equipment. This is easily the worst piece of equipment in the game right now, and it really doesn't do very much. There's no reason to run this over the queen's regular abilities or even the healer puppet. Even at max level, we've seen it used in the competitive scene. It just doesn't do a lot of damage. Now, what I would be looking for out of the giant arrow in the future is if people could start using it the way we used to do the Royal Champion trick, which, if you're not familiar with that, back at like Town Hall 13, you used to be able to drop like an earthquake and maybe a couple of lightning spells on a key defense, send in the RC, pop her ability, and she takes out a couple of big defenses right away. Now, if we could start doing that in the competitive scene with this giant arrow, then it might move up on the tier list. But until then, we're gonna have to wait for people to actually want to upgrade this thing and start testing it with tricks. But for now, it sits in the F tier. All right, moving up on the tier list, we're gonna start off here with the Royal Gem, one of the Royal Champion's only pieces of equipment. She doesn't have anything special at the moment. This is a nice little C tier thing, gives her a little bit of health, gives her a little bit of damage, and hopefully when the Royal Champion does get some new equipment, this will probably be the first one to go, unless they manage to give us another terrible piece of equipment like the giant arrow. But looking forward to see what the RC gets. But for now, she's got a nice little C tier piece of equipment. Next up, we've got the Barbarian puppet for the king at the C tier. Now, this is not a bad piece of equipment. However, the Barbarian King has a lot of other equipment that is just significantly better than the Barbarian puppet, and that's why this is his lowest tier piece of equipment at the moment. There's really no reason to run the Barbarian puppet anymore with the other options available for the king. And then rounding out the C tier, we do have the Archer Queen's healer puppet. Now, this is the second new piece of equipment for the queen. It is not great, it's not super impressive, but we have seen it being used a good bit in the competitive scene, and we've seen it come in handy here and there. It's not incredible. I still think personally that the regular queen ability is better, but once in a while, the healer puppet, when maxed out or at least high level, does help out a little bit. I think if they could make a little bit of a tweak to this piece of equipment, like make the healers pop up a little bit further behind the queen so they don't get immediately targeted by defenses, I think this would be significantly better. But the way it sits right now, I say it's comfortably in the C tier. All right, moving up to the B tier, and kicking off the B tier, we've got the King's Vamp Stash. Now, I still think the Barbarian King has the better options, but if for some reason you don't have the Giant Gauntlet, I think this would be a decent replacement for that, because if you've got this thing leveled up, that king is going to regenerate a ton of health, especially if you got that Barbarian King just working around the outside of the base. He's only going to encounter a few defenses, and this king is going to stay up for quite some time, so I think this is a solid B tier option for the king. All right, and the next piece of B tier equipment, going back to the Barbarian King, we've got the Earthquake Boots. Now, the Vamp Stash is great, but there are some scenarios where you might want some walls opened up in the core of the base, like if you're doing an Electro Titan smash with no Root Riders, or some sort of smash attack where the king's in the middle of the base and you need some walls opened up, or even if you're doing a hero dive with the king, queen, or whatever, and you want to open up the first couple of layers of walls with the king. There are definitely some great scenarios where the Earthquake Boots can get some good value. Now, that being said, there's still some other options that are far better for the Barbarian King, but again, there are some scenarios where the Earthquake Boots do come in handy. Next up in the B tier, this is going to be the Invisibility Vial. And I know it might seem a little crazy putting this down in the B tier, but if you were to change the queen's abilities, this would be easily replaced with another invis spell if you wanted to just make the queen invisible with a spell, although the Invisibility Vial is obviously very good with the Archer Queen. And yeah, it makes her invisible. If she has the Archer puppets on, which is a good combo, she goes invisible. The Archer puppets are there to tank some damage. Obviously, it's a very good equipment to have with the queen. And we're going to round out the B tier with the Archer Queen's final ability here, and it is going to be the Archer Puppet. So obviously she spawns the archers in, and if she does go invisible with either the invisibility equipment or an invisibility spell, these archers can take some of the damage from the surrounding defenses, and of course they also can do a little extra damage as well. So overall, this is a pretty solid piece of equipment, but hopefully we see something else for the Queen a little bit later on. Let's go ahead and move on up to the A tier. Alright, and here we go. Getting into the A tier, we're going to kick it off with the Warden's abilities, and we've got the Healing Tome here for the Warden to start off the A tier. This is a very good ability here for the Grand Warden. You can give the troops that you're using a little bit of extra healing. So this has been really good with smash attacks or any attacks where you're already using a bunch of rage spells and you can get a little bit of extra healing in the core of the base for your troops. Or if you're doing a smash attack and you do have healers with your smash troops, the Healing Tome can heal up your healers while they're in the core of the base, like a Super Bowler smash or Electro Titan smash. Any type of smash like that, usually the healers tend to die out like midway through the base, but if you pop this, heals the healers back up, and that'll keep your troops moving all the way through the base. But let's move on to the next one. So to follow that one up, we will have the Rage Gem for the Warden up here in the A tier as well. And again, this is another great piece of equipment. The Warden has really well-balanced equipment where it's going to be mostly situational based on what type of attack strategies you are using is where the Rage or where the different equipments can shine. So for the Rage Gem, for example, if you're using a bunch of Rage spells, like I said a little bit earlier, the Rage Gem does not stack. And another thing to keep in mind is that the Rage Gem does not give movement speed. So the Rage Gem's not good if you're using lots of Rage spells, or if you're using troops like Balloons. The Balloons already hit hard, but they're super slow, so the Rage Gem doesn't really benefit them so much. For something like Balloons, you might even consider something like the Life Gem, which we'll talk about next. But yeah, the Warden, his 3 other abilities, not counting, of course, the main one, they are all very situational and they're all very good. And then the last Warden equipment up here in the A tier is going to be the Life Gem, and this isn't to be overlooked. It gives that 90% HP increase, which is actually huge, and like I said earlier, Balloons are one of the troops that benefit the most from this. The bulkier troops, of course, there is a capped capacity, so it can only go so high, but something like Balloons can get that full benefit. If you do want to run smash attacks where you're going to be using either the Rage Gem or the Healing Tome, then a good replacement for this is just to bring an Apprentice Warden, especially for the bulkier troops. They're going to get a bigger HP boost from an Apprentice Warden than they would for the Life Gem. So just consider what kind of attack you're doing and how you might be able to benefit between the Life Gem versus the Apprentice Warden. And again, if you're doing air attacks like a Lalo, you don't want to use an Apprentice Warden. You would rather use the Life Gem because obviously the Apprentice Warden's just going to get sniped. Alright, and that's going to wrap up the Warden's equipment for the A tier. Let's go ahead and wrap up the A tier. We also have the Seeking Shield, the Royal Champion's secondary ability up here in the A tier. Now this one, unlike her other piece of equipment, is going to be a bit harder to replace. I think this is a very, very good piece of equipment. The RC pops that ability, gets a lots of damage on some defenses, and a lot of defenses she can even just straight up take down in one shot. But yeah, this is a great one to have. And this one is going to be difficult to replace, so I'll be interested to see if Supercell gives the champion something that's even better than this, but we'll have to wait and see. And to wrap up the A tier is going to be the Rage Vial. This is a very good piece of equipment that I highly recommend running on the Barbarian King. He obviously hits lots of extra damage, and he moves a bit faster, and of course he gets some health back, so this is just overall a great piece of equipment to run with the Barbarian King. No matter what other piece of equipment you want to run, I highly recommend running the Rage Vial on the King. Definitely worth it. Alright, and we finally made it to the S tier, the best of the best pieces of equipment. And we're going to start it off with a must-have. Honestly, all of the abilities up here in the S tier are must-haves on your heroes. And we're starting it off with the Warden's Eternal Tome. Honestly, I don't know why they didn't just go ahead and mark this as an epic equipment, because that 9 seconds, I think it's up to 9.5 seconds of invincibility for any troops that are in that ability, not just troops, but heroes and siege machines. I mean, it just goes without saying, this is definitely a must-have on the Grand Warden. So you got to have the Eternal Tome, and then it doesn't matter what your other 3 are, because the other 3 for the Warden, like we talked about, are situational, depends on your army, all that good stuff. But you gotta have the Eternal Tome. Next up in the S tier, of course, is going to be the Giant Gauntlet. If you have this, you've gotta have it on your Barbarian King. If you don't have it, hopefully it comes in some form to purchase with gems here very soon, because this is an incredibly good piece of equipment for the Barbarian King, and you pair it up with that Rage Vial that we talked about earlier, and he just does tons of damage and moves quickly through base. It's just so incredibly good with the Barbarian King. So we've gone over all of the pieces of hero equipment in the game at this point in time, but there is one honorable mention that Supercell has shown us but has not yet been released, and we're going to go ahead and put it in the tier list based on what I'm guessing it's going to be like. It is going to be the next epic equipment, and it is going to be the Queen's Frozen Arrow. They did show this off to us in the early video back when they first announced hero equipment, but obviously it's not in the game yet, and there's speculation that it is coming within the next big event, which is supposed to be Lunar New Year. Now, none of that is confirmed as far as when it's coming to the game, but they have shown us that it exists, and it should be something that is coming. But it is going to be basically every shot that the Archer Queen does is like having Frostamites on her arrows, so she slows down any defense she's shooting at, any enemy heroes, enemy troops, anything like that. It actually looks really crazy, especially if you're a Queen Charge player. So if I were to place the Frozen Arrow on the list, I'm going to go ahead and put it in the S tier. Now, this is just speculation at the moment. I haven't obviously had a chance to actually test it myself. I don't have access to the dev build, so I'm just guessing, but I feel like it's going to be a pretty comfortable guess. And I'm actually going to be saving up my ores, and as soon as this thing comes out, I'm going to be upgrading it, so I'm going to go ahead and put that Frozen Arrow in the S tier for now. But here we have it, the final tier list. Let me know what you guys think of this tier list down in the comments below, and if you're looking forward to that new Frozen Arrow coming for the Archer Queen. That is going to be a wrap for this video. Hope you guys enjoyed this one. If you guys want to see some pro clashers in action, I recommend checking out my previous video right here.